IVM.
This is Storytellers and Storysellers live on tape. You're listening to Vineet Kanabar on the IVM Podcast Network. Branded content has been around for a while. When I started in this business, branded content used to be the last quadrant of the last slide. It wasn't even the entire slide. It was just the last bottom right quadrant of the last slide, where some brand manager somewhere wanted a viral idea. These are times that I'd wonder why I do this. Why did I choose to get into the business of content marketing or branded content or creating interesting things that people like to watch and share? Why didn't I go and do the conventional advertising and get a ridiculously low-paying job at Ogilvy? And I didn't. And I'm very proud of it, right? I've been in the business of content for a long time now. And I've observed many companies enter this space over the past few years. A lot of them have carved out very interesting niches for themselves. Some companies do fantastic work with memes. There are some people who are really good working with influencer content, whatever that means. And then there are some companies that seem to really get it, right? And when I say really get it, I mean the entire bouquet of, we want to make a crazy, interesting video to launch our South offering, or we want to make an IP that really reflects India's hip-hop culture very well, or we want to, as I have done several times, launch some podcasts in the Indian market, which has been an interesting journey as well. I'm very happy to share with you, my listeners, that I'm joined on this episode today by a couple of people from Supari Studios. Shirley, Chief Business Officer, and also my senior from Micah. And Jain.
Manoti.
And Manoti Jain, COO and founding member at Supari Studios. Welcome to the show. I hope you liked the introduction I gave you and your company.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for having us here. Loved the introduction.
Love it. Thank you so much for making time. Thank you so much for
having us.
Me. I know the two of you are pretty busy, pretty sure about that, given the sheer number of things that Supari seems to be doing. And to just round off the introduction, Supari Studios is now part of Kulfi Collective, which has Post Office, Supari Studios,
And Kida Media.
Right? When I first heard of Supari Studios, and it's a fantastic name, props to everyone who was involved in giving it that name, I was really taken by the whole daku thing. I think you kind of sunsetted it, or if you still use it, I don't know. But everyone at Supari was called a daku, and we are like, they'd sign off mails saying dakus, which is pretty cool, right? And I'd always thought of Supari, this is even before I worked with you, because I had friends there, etc. I'd always thought of you guys as like a really cool creative shop. And I'm so glad that promise is something that you guys live up to, right? So let me get this podcast started by asking you, what is the secret sauce that you guys have? And I have a hypothesis on what that is. But I'd love to know what principles, or what is the secret sauce, what is the thought process here that really pulls people together at Supari to put out stuff that tends to work more often than not.
Okay, I think I'm going to start first. I think at the core of it is about the fact that back in the day, I think 10 years ago when we started off, we would do like wedding films and birthday videos. But at the core of it, we wanted to ace those videos because we felt that there was a human connection to what we were doing. Like whoever's birthday it was or wedding it was, it mattered to them. So we really put our heart into doing those films with like all honesty, and we put it out there. So I think at the core of it, like keeping aside the cultural pieces and everything that we're doing, I feel like we've always, if we take up something, we want to do it 100%, and we want to say an honest story and make sure that we're touching someone with it. So I think everyone in Supari combined feels that way, that if you're touching something, let's do it to 100% and do it right. And I think that's what's played out in our strategy over the years. It's simple. It's not a strategy. I think it's a feeling that has got all of us together to think in a particular way.
I love it. Shirley?
Yeah, I think before and I've been at Kulfi now for about 4 years, and Supari, like you mentioned, is one of them. I think one of the things that I've seen across, and I've seen it from the other side, as being an agency who possibly would commission the work. And of course, that business model has changed for us. We don't work as much with agencies and so on. But I think one thing that really stood out is, apart from like the passion, there is, I think across each of the verticals that we have, there is a common thread of wanting to do work that really is chatter-worthy, that people would really get and understand, that is up and in sync with the trends. And very simply, the way we put it is like, want to leave a little dent on culture, where you look at a piece of work in the moment and you really feel like, these people get it, get the audience, get the brand, is really up there and cool. Yeah, and I think for us, like our biggest talking point, and good work begets more good work. That was, I think, the crux of everything that we did and we continue to do. That there is, I think, internally that bar of what is enough itself is fairly high. Yeah, any piece of work needs to be reel worthy, needs to be work that, somebody, like if I tell you about the pieces of work, you're more likely to say, yes, I know about it. Yeah. So I think that is one continuing thread across the organization for any of the verticals, that dent on culture is something consistently that we want to kind of stick to.
I love it.
And just to add to that, I think one of the things that we do, like in the process part of it, the secret sauce is to really identify who are the people we're talking to and what is the right thing to do. Like we deep dive into understanding the audience, understanding the landscape, and getting the right kind of people and collaborating with them. I think collaboration is key. Yeah. We've realized very early on in the journey that one person cannot make a film. It's about just getting the right people in the room and getting the mix to be able to say that story. So I think that's where we are at.
I mean, the stuff you're saying sounds straight out of the playbook for great content, right? Trying to put out an authentic story, trying to make a dent on culture, trying to pull all of it together in a collaborative way. But often it is super hard to do.
Yeah.
Right? What really fascinates me, and again, I have worked with Supari as a partner at an agency. I've worked with you guys as a client in my day job. Just observed as someone, trying to stay abreast with who's doing good work in the industry right now. I think there are some aspects of this business that you guys have figured out in a way that very few other creative shops, so to speak, have. And here's what I mean by that, right? I think the range of projects that Supari has under their belt is just mind-boggling. I know that several creative shops out there will be like, man, we want to do branded content also, and we want to do culture shaping work also, and we want to do IPs also, and we want to do cool shit also. But it's not always possible to do. Neither is it possible to do well, nor is it possible to do at all, right? To have the right people in the room to pull it off, right? How have you managed to then really do it, right? Like, to me, what it seems like is Supari has access to the kind of talent, or at least has the kind of nous in finding the right kind of talent for the right kind of project, right? I think I've experienced that on a bunch of projects that I've worked with you on. But the one place where, to me, it really shines through was what you did for Netflix with Namma Stories. I think the kind of crew that built that and the kind of stuff that you put out there was a great example. Would you like to give us a sense on how that happened?
Sure. And actually, before we talk about Namma Stories, I want to just talk about the collaboration process and what is this one thing that has a go-to thing when a project comes to us. I think it's the combination of something that we called a BTL and an FTL talent. We call this the behind the lens. So we believe that there are people working behind the lens who are great, talented people who are good at their technical skills and craft, right? Whether it's cinematographers, directors, writers, composers, etc. And then there is the FTL talent, which is front of the lens talents who are influencers, who've gone deep with what they're doing and they understand the territory very well. And I think that combination of getting a good BTL talent aligned with a good FTL talent has really played a big role in all the work that we do. So
I love the way you put it, like the BTL and FTL. I mean, I don't know if it's sort of de rigueur, but that's the first time I've come across that those TLAs, which are 3-letter acronyms?
That was our way of figuring out, okay, what is it that's really working out? Because we kept asking ourselves every time that we want to consistently put out cultural pieces and we want to deliver hits after hits after hits, but what is it that is working out? And then we just went through a couple of our projects and we're like, okay, this combination has really played out. So for Nama Netflix, I think Netflix came to us and they were like, they want to release their South slate, and there were a bunch of shows that they were releasing that year. And specifically from a strategy standpoint, they realized that South itself is a market in itself, right? Like you look at India and every brand is sort of communicating at India level, but you got to go like deep and focused. And I think Netflix was very early on clear about the fact that they need to talk to that audience differently and they need to be hyper focused. So what they did was that they sort of divided the South territory into the 4 big languages, and that was the one thing that they thought was important. And the second thing from the point of view of the brand was they realized that Twitter and South worked very differently. A lot of conversations on Twitter when it comes to the South are unique conversations and people are a lot more engaging as compared to the other platforms. So it was the onset of a slate of South shows as well as them releasing their Twitter channel. So they released a very South specific Twitter channel to make authentic conversations there. So they came to us and they're like, we want a music video and this is what we want to sort of capture. And then we jammed with the Netflix team, and all credits to the Netflix team because they were very clear about what they wanted. They knew how they wanted to talk, and they also put out names of the artists that they thought we should bring on board. So the Supari team and the Netflix team jammed together. First step of the process was to understand what do you guys want to talk about and who do you want to talk to. Once we carved out that we want to talk about these 4 different types of audiences, right? Whether it's Malayalam, Kannada, Tamil or Telugu. These were the 4 languages we wanted to capture. Then we went about understanding that, okay, who is the FTL talent behind this piece? And then Netflix and us jammed together on identifying that, okay, let's get Hanuman Kind, let's get Siri, let's get Arivu, let's get Neeraj. These are the 4 influencers where they were like, okay, each of them have been authentic in these spaces and they talk to a wider audience in the South. So after we realized that we got these guys, then we were like, okay, who's the BTL talent we need to get? Because obviously sitting in Bombay, we don't understand how the South works exactly, right? So we needed to really upskill ourselves and understand who should be the team. And that's when we identified our lyricist, our composer, our writer, our director, our cinematographer. And we built a really strong team of people from the South. And it was a diverse team. So we did try and find a good balance between who we are picking. Once we got that team on board, then the next thing was how do we create this anthem? Because there was an idea of an anthem and we had to roll this piece out in 2 weeks' time.
Right.
We had to speak to all the artists. We had to assemble behind the lens team as well as identify what the track will be. Netflix and Supari sort of came on board and said that let's get Karthik on board to compose the track. Then all the parties sort of came together. We got each of the artists to build in their pieces. We got the director of the team to sort of really tighten and give feedback on how this should work out. And obviously, Supari came in with like building this platform of collaboration and sort of putting some process to the madness because it is chaotic when you're working with 15 different people across like 2 weeks. And we went back and forth and the track wasn't ready till we went into for the shoot. But I think that everyone was very aligned to the stories we wanted to say from each state and what we wanted to showcase. So first we built out the visual board. And then we worked backwards and then we wrote the lyrics for it. So it was not a linear process.
Right.
And after the lyrics were built, then we went ahead for the shoot and then we put the pieces together. But I think it was honestly the combination of people that came together along with the Netflix team to sort of build this piece out.
I love it. I mean, it gives me a sense of how you operate, right? Because I've seen this model work out on stuff that we've done at Spotify with you as well. We recently did something very similar in nature, but very different geography with the Spotify singles that we did, and we had the BTL talent. Wow, I'm already using those terms. The BTL talent of Pulkit Kochar coming in and helping the whole thing, and then the sort of FTL talent that we already brought on board and stuff like that. It's very interesting. Let me switch gears and ask Shirley about how you plan business for an outfit that is as diverse as this, right? And here's what I mean. Of course, you have these atomic incoming pieces as well, right? But with the kind of creative muscle that you guys have on board, and shout out to our old friend Nisha Vasudevan, go listen to the episode that has Nisha and Sumukhi on this. They talk about finding their creative voice. But you've got like 5 finishers working with you guys, right? And the moment you have creative people on board, they have ideas, and when you have sharp creative people who are clued into what's happening around them in culture, etc., they want to do big things as well, right? Which is where the whole range of, okay, we'll do brand-led stuff, but then we'll also do IPs. How do you plan a business cycle for an outfit like this? And I'm asking you this because that's the holy grail for an ad agency, right? I know NCDs at legacy ad agencies who would give an arm and a leg to be like, boss, IP banate hain na, please IP banate hain, etc. Right? But here you are really actually going out and making IPs. So how does that work?
It's a really interesting and to me personally a really fun exercise. I think because the kind of projects that we have done, we're particular about the kind of projects that we also want to do. We actually, at the core of it, to put it really simply, also look for a very strong value alignment with the people that we work with and with the organizations that we work with. We literally look for people who have that same drive and hunger, including the likes of you, who kind of want to do, really interesting work. But having said that, so we look at what we define as strategic brands or strategic accounts that we kind of want to go after. We look at what is the appetite for creating work that has cultural relevance, what is a value match with, both the companies, with the people that we're working with, how collaborative they are. And I can tell you hands down, some of our longest associations that we've had with brands are with people across the table who really give us the freedom and the liberty to see our ideas come to life and work really collaboratively. So over the years, we work really well where, for the team that's there at the brand's end, if there is a small creative team that wants somebody to partner with, where we're not vendors who are just executing stuff, but really partner with. So Arjun at Red Bull, I think we've worked with him for about 6 to 7 years now.
Shout out to ASR.
Yes.
Did you know? Okay, this is trivia and I promise you this. Right now, I will bring Arjun Singh Ravi on this podcast at some point when we come back after our break. But did you know that Arjun Singh Ravi used to be DJ Paper Slut at a point in time?
Yes.
That is Arjun Singh Ravi trivia that I must share on this podcast, right? He used to be DJ Paper Slut, but back to you.
Yeah, so I think he's also really particular about the kind of people that he wants to work with, who kind of get the vision of what the brand wants to do. Shikha, who used to be we started working with her when she was at Swiggy. Again, great champion for great work. So we've been able, of course, Mohijit and you at Spotify, Tara, Kanika, Akash at Netflix, lots of people across who have that same sort of drive and passion to kind of want to do great work. And we've just gotten into the room, been able to partner with them. There is a great level of trust in the creative vision and be able to build out from there. So I know that as a business person, there would normally be this temptation to pick up big money projects that vanilla work. Thankfully, at the organization, there is consistent alignment with regards to what is the kind of work that we want to do and where we kind of draw that line and what we will drop. So we have also this basic simple filter that if the business and strategy team, if the creative team, and if the producers are not all aligned on, is this a project we want to work on, we will not pick a project. So that is something that at the core of it, if the team is not happy working on this, if this is not going to be an opportunity for us to create a new benchmark of work, if it's not going to be a piece of work that, will not get chatter or conversation started, we are more likely to not pick up that piece of work. Yeah, so it seems like a lot of no's, but it's great to have that sense of focus and clarity on what you want to do, which means that the pool of work that then goes out is so much more stronger. And somebody like Red Bull then becomes the benchmark of content, right? And who doesn't then want to do, more and more work of the lot? So I think that's been our way of kind of filtering out how we look at business.
I love it. I think it's a very understated attribute of good business, right? That you should know when to say no.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's very important, even more important in creative field, like my mom would say, but also very important in other businesses as well, right? You don't want to end up in every deal, right? And the words you use right at the top of your response was values alignment. And I think it's very, very important. It's very understated. It's very underrated as a filter for choosing who you work with.
Like it's the small thing, right? Are you a partner or are you a vendor? Are you an equal at the table? Is there space for you to have an opinion on what the final creative vision is? And will the team thrive? It's just like simple, small things that I think make a huge difference to building out that relationship as well in the long run.
I actually want to add something to what Shirley said. And this is, again, Vineet is going to be like lots of acronyms in this company. But
I love acronyms.
We have this thing called, so very early on in the journey, we started getting a lot of briefs. And then we were like, we don't align with any of these briefs. But how do we go about choosing what to do and what to not, right? And back then we were like 3 turned to like 130 right now. How do you still continue to be aligned with teams across different functions, right? And I think early on, we put this thing called the CRM BBT filter. Shirley's going to kill me because I'm talking on it's a filter.
CRM BBT. Okay.
It's a filter. Okay. And every time a project comes into our inbox, our inbox is called Karobar. When it comes into our inbox, every team has to run it by this filter, and it's a super quick process. Okay, so you can't take more than 120 minutes to do this. So every team has to align quickly and put their numbers in. C stands for, is this a creative opportunity? R stands for, is this a relationship that we want to sort of pursue? M stands for, are we going to make money of this? T stands for, is this a territory that we're excited about? And B stands for, do we have the bandwidth to take it up? So as soon as the email comes in, our filters are up there, and a lot of times it fails. And our idea is that even if there are 3 out of 5, then we can consider taking up. Otherwise, we drop to brief.
And we literally have to have one person from each function. So the territories also, like she mentioned, these are also like critical to us. So diversity and gender and inclusivity itself is a content territory that we are keen on creating more content around. And of course, music and culture, like she mentioned, and gaming and sports. So that itself becomes a filter. So if a groundnut oil company came to us with a brief, would we do it? If there was an opportunity to do on those filters really differentiated creative work, or I don't know, IP that was very different in a culture space, in the food space, but looked at food really differently, that, you know, if the team thought this is something that we were keen on, we'd consider it. Mm-hmm. But it automatically, and I think during the pandemic specifically, we just needed one person from each function, from business strat, from the producers bay, and from the creative team to take a call. So decision making was that much more quicker. You just need one person from each team to say, hey, this is something that we're really keen on, we want to pursue it, and that's fine. You can go ahead and pursue that particular project. Yeah, so when we were not all in the same physical space and you didn't have to like get together and do it, it just made everything move so much faster. And that's what you need, right? You need people who are passionate about wanting to do the project.
Right.
And then they're accountable to making sure that the best product is delivered on this. So yeah, I think the filters like really come in handy as well.
I love it. I mean, speaking of groundnut oil, I'm pretty sure someone's going to make Inclusive Cholesterol, the web series.
Possible.
But this is great, man. I think the simplicity of it, I think, and I know it feels like you're giving away trade secrets, but there's so much to learn out of this, right? I think when you are the leader in a space, and let's face it, right? Supari Studios is sort of leader in the creative, cultural content sort of a space. These are templates that you offer as ways out, or as sort of paths to follow to success. And again, obviously, just by knowing it, it's not enough, right? There is a culture and there is obviously a process. And like you said, there is passion at the heart of all of it. But I love the simplicity of it. I think this is something that I will also use in my life at some point, and not just for business decision making. I will probably use it in my personal life as well. On that note, we will go into a quick break in which I will tell Shubhankar to raise the temperature of the AC in this room. Go nowhere. This is a conversation with the who's who of Supari Studios. This is Vineet Kanabar on Storytellers and Storysellers. And we're back on Storytellers and Storysellers. We're talking to Manoti and Shirley from Supari Studios. We had a fantastic first half of this episode. Before we started recording, Manoti was like, man, I don't want to do this. I'm going to run away. I don't want to do a podcast with you. This doesn't work for me. And we had to calm her down and say, listen, this is not an exam. Or it's not a pitch. Just relax. But is this your first podcast?
This is my first podcast, and we've been so inward looking, to be honest, and we've always thought of like our work is going to talk for ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's only after Shirley joined the team and she was like, stop singing in the bathroom, everyone. We got to get out there. And she's been the reason who's pushing all of us to really like put ourselves out there. So yes, this is my first. I was fairly nervous, but this conversation has been lots of fun. So thank you.
Awesome. How about you, Shirley?
Yeah, this is my first podcast.
What, really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's amazing, man. I take special pride in being people's first podcast. I really enjoyed it. I mean, this is episode 149, I'm going to say. And I think a good 45% of those people have been on their first podcast with me. So
That's great.
This is my way of evangelizing this space. So thank you for making me your first podcast. On with the show.
Thank you for having us.
Let me ask you about this, right? When you make a name for yourself as a creative outfit, this is India, here we think ideas are free. And that's the habit that a sort of servicing-led agency culture India has sort of put to clients, right? How do you ensure that your creative work is actually valued in that sense, right? Now, I know that some outfits continue to be servile. And it's one thing to provide service, and it's another thing to provide servitude, which is a very different concept. But how do you guys deal with this?
So there are a couple of things. First of all, in the nature of business that we have, most of the work is project.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not on retainer. So every project then becomes a pitch.
Sure.
So right at the onset, of course, we're filtering out and figuring out what is it that we actually want to pitch for. The second thing that we're starting to do is charge a development fee or a pitch fee, as you may call it. Because
Do
you're
clients
putting in...
actually pay that?
People are starting to do it. And I think people in the industry are also starting to ask for it. The simple thing is that the team is putting in time into developing ideas, into developing concepts, into working on strategy. And if every conversation is a pitch, beyond a point, the team is going to burn out. So I think what happens with a fee, with a development fee, is that there is also, and we have certain parameters put into place. There is accountability on the other end of the table to ask only for a certain number of revisions or changes that are there. There is a certain timeline to which this applies to, because the worst deadline is no deadline.
Sure.
And this shopping of ideas then kind of stops, because the way I see it is that if you were asked to do something for free, would you do it? And that was work related. If you wouldn't and you would expect somebody to pay for you, you need to pay for people's time. And you are expecting the whole hog, right? You are expecting the best of ideas, the best of scripts. And we collaborate with so many people. And we want to obviously pay for their time as well, with the best of writers, with the best of creative directors. And we're not the kind of people to say that, you know, we have everything in-house. If there's a certain kind or level of humor that's expected on a particular piece, or like she mentioned, if it's a South piece that needs to be, then we need to bring in somebody who understands South strategy way stronger than we currently do. We need to be paying these people. So it only makes sense for us to be charging for a development fee. And that is one of the ways that we're starting to filter that out. But like I mentioned, I think we're seeing that brands are starting to buy into this conversation, and people across the industry are also starting to do it. And I think that is the biggest clincher, that if everybody kind of starts to do it and value their time, the brands, and it's not like they're on the other side of the table, because everybody is collaboratively working, right? You don't want to be in an environment where somebody is dragging you on and just it's like a constant conversation of you don't know when, what is happening. So if there is money on the table, there's accountability to somebody else responding to you on time and sort of fruitfully kind of seeing something through.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, for us, we asked the question to ourselves that what do we really value ourselves at, right? Because when we went around in rooms asking for a pitch fee, development fee, or an effort fee, or whatever you want to call it, I think we took a stance that we at our end will first go out and pay our creatives for that effort and that development. So we started off with saying, okay, let's institutionalize this with brands, but let's start this immediately with our community, because then people will look at giving you that time of day because you're respecting their creative efforts, right? So to this end right now, across Kulfi, like whoever collaborates with us, it's a small fee because obviously brands are yet not paying, but we still want to appreciate the time that they're putting in, because our entire model is based on collaboration. So when, like Shirley said, when we're doing Northeast stories, when we're doing South, when we're talking to communities, you've got to bring people from those communities. And getting them to work for free just feels wrong because we are in that industry and doing that work. So I think in our own little ways, we started to do that with a community that we're collaborating with. And right now, like Shirley said, we're in the process of really asking that of our clients as well. And a lot of people right now are open to it. Like, so we've anyway not working with 500 clients. We've decided that we're going to work with fewer of them who there is a value match with. And when we're explaining this to them, we've received positive responses. Obviously, these are brands that have global mandates, etc. So people are trying to navigate and sort of do that. We do see like a positive response in that direction. So it feels good. Having said that, IP work overall does not pay you fantastically well. I think it's a slow burn and people slowly you get equity with the brand. Like it's a slow model. And I think slowly we've proved that with Red Bull, with the brands that we worked with. I think over the years now we've started to really demand for development fee, for the fee for that project itself, right? And I think that's a change that we have seen in the last 10 years. It took a little while, but I think we've reached a spot where we can demand for it.
Yeah, I think two things. One is like the value alignment, like we said right at the start, for the company is really, really critical. And another thing, over the last couple of years, a lot of the brands we work with, like I said, have a small creative team internally at their end as well. So in a way, they kind of feel the pain. They know what they're asking for. So I think they're far more receptive to at least like hearing us out about a conversation around this. So I think that makes things a little easier.
I think things have changed, right? Like I said, right at the top, this discipline earlier would be just a vendor relationship, right? Like,
Yeah.
Okay, there's a master agency. They have their own in-house production house, but they will only give it to the in-house production house if their margin is actually 50-60%. If the margin is a little low, they'll give it out to a vendor, and the vendor is actually, never shown to the client, etc., etc. And these are the gory old days, right? But things have changed as the marketing discipline itself has evolved, right? I think the role of a brand manager is far more attuned to fostering this kind of creative collaboration that is beneficial to the business. And more in my head, at least, it, in a very strange way, it mirrors the long-term legacy agency relationship as well, right? In the sense that it's actually creative patronage. That's what it is, right? You have these deep relationships. For example, Ogilvy has that with a V, for example, or with the bunch of Mondelez brands, right? Ogilvy or Mindshare have worked with these guys for 25-30 years, right? That's a long relationship where nothing gets taken for granted. Everyone's getting their due, either in terms of monetary or in terms of PR, right? And then there are, new age brands, if you may put it like that, the Netflixes, the Tinder, the Bumble, the Spotify of the world, where hey, our requirements are very different, right? Do we still have a Burnett sitting at the table doing our brand work? Absolutely, because that's a different requirement. But the day-to-day creative, cultural, exciting work that requires a partnership. It doesn't need a vendor sort of a relationship, right? I think the concept of a pitch fee, in my opinion, must happen, right?
I'm going to hold you to it.
We don't put things on pitch at all. I think it must happen, right? And it must happen especially for people who are serial idea shoppers. Right? And I'm saying this as ex-agency business head as well. That boss, if you're actually going to give me a 5 lakh rupee RO, you're going to make me do 6 weeks of work for it, I don't want it. Go back, right? But this pitch fee bit actually brings in accountability on both ends. Right? You're not going to make me sit around for 4 weeks and come back with like a practical presentation showing, these are the possibilities. I don't care about possibilities. You charge money, right? Do the thing. And on the other end as well, it forces you to think harder, right? Otherwise, I mean, I'm not bitching out my community here, but some marketing briefs are terrible.
To think hard on all aspects, right? Whether it's even writing down a brief to taking a decision and not sort of lingering on something.
Absolutely. I think the only agency, it's not like they charge pitch fee. They just don't do pitches. It's sideways and Kino at sideways. They just don't do pitches. They're like, pitch, not interested. You have work for us. You know what our work is like. It speaks for itself. If you have something that fits the profile, bring it to us and we'll do it. Otherwise, we're not pitching. And I think that's a wild stance, right? And of course, you need to be someone who's been in the industry like we were talking, 25 plus years, for people to know exactly what you stand for, right? But fascinating conversation about pitch fees. I hope I never have to pay one, but if you ask me for one, at some point in time, I will consider it. Although, I mean, off the record, we're never idea shopping guys, right? We know what we want.
I think that the reason why this collaboration has worked out so beautifully is because there's one clear stance that we want to do this and we want to do this with you guys. It's not idea shopping. So we're willing to then like work and collaborate and put it on paper. And I think that's what has worked out for at least this is off this with Spotify and with Supari.
Fantastic. Manoti, I want to take you down memory lane for a
Yes.
second, right? And I wanted you to give us a sense of some of the mistakes that you made early on in the life of Supari Studios. You can tell me about mistakes you made early on in life, but that we can do over a beer, I guess. But about when you started, right? I think Supari started, 2014?
We started in 2012.
2012.
Yes. Mistakes. Okay, can I go back the memory lane to just give a little bit of context on
Oh, please.
where we came from?
Absolutely.
And then I don't call them mistakes. I think those were learning curves for us, but
wins and learnings.
wins and learnings and lots of I would say conflicting times. But the way Supari started off was I had just come back from university. Akshat, who's the creative head and co-founder, is my college friend. So I picked up the phone and asked him, what's going on? Let's do something together, right? And Advait around that time was also just getting out of his job, and he realized that Akshat and I are just like two kids trying to do something. We went ahead, joined a short film competition, called all our other friends, asked for camera, asked for things, and we just did that short film. We won that film. We got 75,000 from that film, and that's how we got our first iMac.
Right.
So we bootstrapped the whole business entirely with that one iMac, and that's how our story began, right? And back in the day, if you asked me 10 years ago, what would we be doing? I think the answer would have still been, we will be saying stories, but we didn't know, where we would be, right? And over the years, we've really I think not being invested has had its own pros and cons because we've had a lot of autonomy, but it also really limits of what you can do and how fast you can do, right? And
Sure.
for us, one of the things, if I can say, has been the fact that the team and the potential it has had of doing more experiments and innovations have been very, very slow. And I think that if there was a way, and slowly over the years, we've made money, we've had small investments coming in as well. But I think that has been one limiting thing for a creative company like ours. And even then we found our time. I think that the way the process has been, it's taken its own due time, right? It's taken us 5 years to get to that, and then another 5 to really sort of capture that. So I think those were a few things that we struggled with because of lack of capital. But in terms of mistakes, I think I'm thinking what mistakes we made. Shirley, you have any stories of things that we've said?
I don't know about mistakes, but I think a couple of things when Advait and I got into a conversation in 2018, and I knew of Supari Studios. When I was at the agency, I was working on a project, Asian Paints Color Journey, and I was doing the research and running that project. And then the client had commissioned them to capture some content. So I knew of this hot shop that was there. And then on and off, I would catch up once in a while with Tara, who was there at that point of time. And then I met Advait, and he was saying, oh, that project for Estee Lauder, oh, that is us. That project for Dolby, that is us. And I'm just how have I never heard or known that y'all are the people behind this work? Even now, to a certain extent, if I tell you the first Gym Star cred ad, that is us. Or the work for the Hotstar IPL TVC, that is us. 8 launches at Estee Lauder, that is us. There's so much of work, but and I understand from a culture perspective also, the place is fairly humble, but sometimes you really have to put yourself out there and say, hey, this is our work.
Yeah.
And this is what we've been doing. And like I said, the good work only gets you more good work. And the moment people started kind of seeing that work, so it is that little bit of shuffle and, having to put yourself out there and say, and claiming the fact that, this is all the good work you actually done. And why not? At Post Office, some phenomenal work that we've been doing, in the AI space as well, with Unreal Engine and so on and so forth, which you'll see more of online. But there is Vitamins 3 as well, which is our own IP that we built out. So there's a lot of work that we're now starting to put out. So I think I wouldn't say that's a mistake, but that I think changed things in terms of we track where our briefs are coming on from, as opposed to, how much are we reaching out and stuff like that. So that has changed things for us. The kind of briefs that have been coming in, that has changed for us. Aside from that, I think another thing that, again, I think it's a process of learning as you grow bigger that you need to kind of implement, and small things like rate cards for everybody that's on the team. So if a project goes beyond a particular time, how you're not bleeding then, because then you're caught in this conundrum of how do I ask for more money, but it's work.
Sure.
And if somebody's expecting more work, then you have a rate card and you can ask for it. So these small sort of process things we've now started to implement and sort of just sharpen things. I think it's like at the heart of it, I think
Yeah.
most of the stuff is in place, but that just helps you have a far more level conversation across the table, I think.
Yeah. And like she said, before Shirley came in, we never spoke about her work. I think it's only after she came in, she was like, okay, we really need. So I think that's a big mistake. And we're still rectifying it. I think that being the guys who are so deeply involved with marketing, that was the lowest on our priority for our own brand. I think
Yeah, I wear the vitamin C merch and I walk around a lot. But also it's great merch.
No, I think you've really hit upon something that there are a lot of B2B companies who are doing amazing B2C work tend not to do in our countries specifically, right? Like, you'll know if you see a Droga 5 piece of work. You'll know it's
Yeah.
Droga 5.
Yeah.
Right? There is no shying away or hiding.
Yeah.
No, people will tell you.
Yeah.
Right? कि वो ये Droga 5 है. So, उनको कैसे पता? उनको पता है क्योंकि Droga 5 ने उसको market किया है. So I think there's some very valuable lessons to be taken from this, right? And again, takes me back to my time at TVF when we joined in. And again, TVF had a great B2C brand, right? People knew, oh, TVF, but the kind of case studies that need to be put out there, or the kind of getting a name out there into the marketing community, that's definitely something that's worth learning. Before we head into the final segment, I want to ask you guys one more thing.
Yes.
And this is more about the fact that you work with so much talent, and today there are influencers and there are celebrities and there are musicians and there are writers, poets, actors, whatever, right? Have you guys considered starting a talent division? Is that something that's been on your mind? Shirley's had a very smile on her face.
We have actually. So, I mean, what we do at this point is that we are sort of not managing the talent, but we have a really solid roster of people that we work with. So we have a small team that's constantly interacting with this talent on the back end, and there are thousands of them. And we're sort of putting a really solid process in place to be able to deepen our relationships with them, and also sort of get, be more agile and do work at speed. Because what we realize is that when a brief comes out, we manually reach out to maybe 100 people asking, right? But now we're sort of putting a tool in place where within seconds we'll know who's available at what cost and timelines, etc. So that's one thing that we're doing. I think on the talent front, this is just the first step of the process. So it is very early on in our journey, but we're looking at sort of really managing and sort of working very closely with Nisha and Akshat. So Akshat obviously is co-founder. Nisha has been leading the creative team at Supari Studios. But this year we sort of took a break and we're our talent needs to be looked as creators and they should be sort of doing a lot more work outside. And this is one of the exercises that we spoke about, right? Inward looking. So we've now sort of come to this point where we're okay, we start with Akshat and Nisha and they become our BTL talent per se, and these guys will lead our creatives on most of the projects. So as of now, there are two who are internally, but we take pride in managing them and sort of moving forward. But having said that, we're building a talent roster this year. The idea is to start with directors and have a combination of experienced directors as well as young directors, because we realized when we started off, we were 20 and we were doing projects back then. And that was that one thing we kept asking ourselves, that if we get into the leagues of working with the biggest brands, will we stop collaborating with younger talent, right? And that is the one thing we want to not do. So we have a really solid roster of young directors who we constantly keep working with and these guys come up with some great ideas. So there's that. But yeah, on the talent front, I think we're starting with the director talent and then we're sort of moving on to writers, producers, composers, etc.
Got it. From a business point of view, how do you feel about that? Because, I mean, talent itself is a shitty business, to be honest. I mean, not shitty, but it's a high touch, high involvement sort of a business. How do you feel about that?
So the need for kind of adding on to this talent roster also comes from a place where sometimes brands or clients kind of want to see different people working on different projects, or they want to see a new perspective from a different director. So in that sense, we're kind of building that out. What we're also doing is kind of identifying people who we want to bet on for a particular kind of work that we want to build out, which is the Kulfi or the Supari brand, right? So to that end, we're building out that roster from that perspective. So it's baby steps on what that roster currently looks like. Like she said, we're starting off with the director and then we'll see what it kind of goes off from there. What it allows us to do is to go into the market with a variety of different perspectives as well. Like Nisha's really good with narrative storytelling kind of work. Akshat's done all of our like far more popular commercial and beauty films, music pieces and so on and so forth. So to that end, we're trying to build a roster of different skill sets, people who come from the humor space, people who are really good with comedy and so on and so forth. So we have that range because depending on the nature of project, we kind of need to have, it's not going to be a one shoe fits all sort of a thing.
Sure.
So it helps to have from that perspective. And we've seen that demand there in the market. So we're building it out from that perspective.
Just to round this off, are you also going into FTL talent? Is that something that you're looking at as well? Or eventually, has that been discussed? Is that something to consider?
I mean, I would say that's too much on our plate. So we would not get into that. I think right now our focus is, we believe that we're really like masters of storytelling from a craft perspective. So we want to sort of hone the technical talent inside of Supari and work with them. And I think that's the positioning that we want to also sort of in the future bring, that we have this roster of talent inside of us that could be standing at a global platform and sort of building films, right?
Sure.
And that's where we are at. FTL talent is a whole new ball game that would be like very, very difficult to manage. So I think we're starting very slow baby steps and we'll sort of take it.
And there are experts in the market, in that space. And we really, really believe very strongly in the collaboration with different people, sharing credit with everybody that's there. If there are people who have been acing it all along, might as well partner with them right now, and get the best in the market to get the best of people to do whatever is right for that particular project. So that is the way we've been looking at it. Will we do it in the future? You never know. I think at the core and crux of everything we do, even from a business plan perspective, the rule is to be agile. And kind of adapt with how the market is changing. From the time I started my career, I moved into digital. I was told I was going to kill my career several years back.
Really?
So, yes.
Where is that person who told you that?
We'll have this conversation later. Yeah, but the rule is to be agile, right? So you never know. But right now we'll ace one part and then we'll get on to the next one.
No, that's what I meant when I said that talent is messy, right? And that's what I meant. I meant FTL talent. Of course, representation and bringing different perspectives together from BTL. Look at me using these phrases
I love
I've
it.
always used them, right? Right. So last segment, what's got you excited about the future? I know, Manoti, you talked about doing some stuff in the AI.
In the immersive tech space.
Immersive tech, yeah. XR, VR, AR. That's
So we're still sort of getting our ground into the immersive tech piece. But I think where we're heading is the fact that we believe that talent and technology and that combination is what's going to be the future. Inside of Supari, we have these little teams experimenting on different pieces. So one of the pieces that came out from post office, and the team experimented with a MetaHuman plugin, which is an app, a tool for generative AI. And through Unreal Engine, we created a music video for Gully Gang. It's a passion project. The team took, I think, approximately 3 months to sort of build it. But it really opens the door to storytelling, right? Like, we realized that we don't even need this talent to shoot them and to build a video. Like, we literally could get artists and do a 360-degree picture of them, and then you can build a whole story, an IP, and it's literally them, right? So those are the things that we're experimenting with. We are bullish about virtual reality and what we can do with that. We are in the process of sort of setting up a studio and do a lot more of those pieces. We've been experimenting with like AR, VR, and these different like storytelling platforms, I would say, where there are lenses that we've made, there are interactive games that we've sort of built out, there are, there's a lot of stuff happening on the back end with like technology, but these are all like, I think, an R&D wing that we call inside of the Kulfi Collective, where we're slowly experimenting and figuring this out.
Yeah, I think what it kind of does for us as a collective as well is that like Supari literally has sister concern right here on the same floor, doing all of this really kick-ass stuff. And then there is Vitamins 3, which is our own IP and is a YouTube channel and Instagram page. And literally whatever we are learning from what's working on a platform, what's not working is applicable now to Supari. So learning happens consistently across. The opportunity to also do collaborative work between the verticals is also that much more higher, that much more quicker. There's a certain level of agility. Everybody's sort of learning constantly, which really, I think, pans out across for the company.
Love it. Last question to you, Shirley, is
yes,
what are you building towards now? I mean, the names out there, I'm sure business is plenty good. I should know. But what's got the floor excited? What are you guys building? What does the leadership at Supari now value as the next level up?
I think one of the conscious calls that we've taken, which is what Manoti was talking about earlier, is rather than go wide and try to work on several different things, we'd rather focus on a few brands and a few projects and really help build out the content with a particular focus in mind. Like I told you, like we have territories that we've defined. We really kind of want to establish and build ourselves out in those particular territories. So wherever there's a value match with brands that kind of help us build that space out, that is what we're kind of focusing on and focusing our efforts. I think that is where the partnership with the brand also really comes into focus and what we're able to bring to the table. Focused energy, time, business insights. We have a strategy team in-house that's focused on kind of looking at what works. And literally, I think that's how we look at working with a client. That's something that I keep telling the team internally as well. If you were in their shoes, what is the call you would take? And would you write the script the exact same way? Would you look at, how do you look at the business? And how do you look at the business objective? And how is this kind of piece of content really helping the brand achieve that? And so it kind of helps to have that focused attention on a few rather than spreading wide. And I think that is something that we're kind of really gunning for this year.
Love it. Love it. I think focus is important and it's gotten you so far, hasn't it? It's amazing.
I also think that it's a good time in our life right now, generally with India winning the Oscar and stuff like that. I think it really puts the South Asian talent on the map. I think as Kulfi overall, I think we've just gotten into the game. The journey is just begun. So I'm hoping that the next podcast we come for, we're talking to you about the Oscar that we have won.
Love it.
We want to do a lot more of the tech pieces that we spoke about, experimentation and innovation while like sort of keeping the stories at heart is where we're heading. So I think focus, continue to do good work
Build
on
out
our
original
craft,
IPs.
and build out original IPs is where we're heading. And all of this with having a lot of like amazing talent behind us and sort of pushing them and putting them on the map is where we're sort of heading for.
Love it, man. If you're listening to Manoti and Shirley talk about the ambitions at Supari, please call them and give them a Supari. And I can definitely vouch for them. These guys do a great job. Not that you need it. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was absolutely lovely. Manoti, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, and I could go on after this for another half an hour talking to you about 100 things. This podcast was really amazing, Vineet. It was super conversational and I had a good time.
Love it. Thank you so much for being on it. Shirley, I'm so glad we finally did this. I have wanted to have you on the show forever. So thank you.
Thank you. Here. I think through this conversation also, I think one of the things that always happens is it's also so much of like reflection for us about what we're doing and sort of like solidifies that. You know, the moment you're answering about it kind of gives
we can discuss my corporate therapy fee after this. That's what I call it, corporate therapy. That's what my
Not
podcast
a pitch fee. Yes, got
it. That's it on this episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. If you liked this episode, what are you going to do? If you like this episode. If you like this episode, look at your phone. Look at it really intently. Look at your phone like you've never seen your phone before. And then click on the 3 dots that you see. Click on the 3 dots and go to share. And then send it to someone who wants to either get into the creative arts or is looking for someone to partner with them on something amazing. Or just send it to someone who you think will enjoy listening to this fantastic conversation. And then rate this show if you're on Spotify or on that other white app that you listen to podcasts on. Or on IVM, right? That's what you do. That's it. This is Vineet Kanabar saying goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.